Hey, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's up? How are you, Matt?
I'm good. I'm good. Hey, those of you watching live, we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and over on Facebook as well in the Mass Business Connections Facebook group. Big group over there of business professionals and business owners. So if you are watching us live, then make sure you throw some comments in the comment section, and we can converse with you. It's Ryan McAniff and Matt Ward, and we're back with Riffin with Ryan and Matt. And today we're going to talk about cash flow. Cash.
Matt, you just went. You just muted. We're going to be talking about cash flow. We thought that was rather important. Obviously, Matt needs a little bit more cash flow in his life so he can get a proper microphone. So, any comments that you can give to Matt about how to get more cash in his life to buy an actual microphone would certainly be helpful for him. What do you think about that, Matt?
That's ridiculous. I have that problem with this microphone, and I didn't even touch it, and it went out. There's a loose connection somewhere in the base where the wire connects, and so sometimes I have an issue where if I move the boom at all that holds the mic, the wire will come loose. It's like I have a bunch of loose wires, maybe in my head. I don't know.
So as a background, I mean, I own a private home care company. We primarily deal with cash. We deal with a little bit of long-term care insurance, but no medical insurance of any kind. So most of our customers are paying by ACH or credit card. A few are paying by check, but we really discourage that. And you owned a web agency in the past that probably did a lot of credit cards, and now that you're a professional speaker, I don't know how payments are made in that world. Are those
Like
more
zero.
well,
I mean, the pandemic, right?
pandemic? But when you were on the road, was that mainly checks that came in?
Yeah, it's a lot of checks. I would take credit card, but or electronic payment of some sort.
Yep.
Even for the coaching services I offer, I run a golf tournament and I take credit card there. Lots of different ways with the web company, we didn't take cash, but sometimes people pay with cash, but it was primarily checks and then recurring billing through credit card. Um, you know, what prompted this discussion, I think, is that I don't come from money. I didn't grow up with money. I don't know what it's like to have a lot of money. A lot of money is relative, I think, to how you grew up and your own personal circumstances. I will say this: I'm 48 now. When I was 35, my financial house was a mess. A mess. I was in a lot of debt. My credit score wasn't that great. And I just didn't realize how important cash flow was in a business, but also in my personal life. I was just leveraging. Um, and I'd done some studying. I read up on the Dave Ramsey stuff. And then I read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, which really changed the game for me. And one of the struggles we had in the web agency was that we paid our staff, we had 8 employees, we paid our staff every other week. And what most small business owners don't realize is when you make payroll every other week, that means that twice a year you have an additional payroll that typically you're not necessarily um, running like planning on. So if you think your payroll is just, for even numbers, I'll just say $5,000. If your payroll is $5,000, you're thinking every 2 weeks I got to pay $5,000, but mentally you're thinking every month I'm paying $10,000. But that's not actually true, because the way the math works out, there's actually 4.3 weeks in a month when you think about business. So what happens is that extra payroll creeps up on you, and you get behind. And we did. And so one of the best strategies that we did was we started reserving small, minute amounts of cash. We called it a payroll account. It was really just the extra payroll account. And we would try and take 10% of a payroll. So $5,000, we'd try and take $500 a week. And if we couldn't do that, we'd do $200 a week. And we would just sweep it to this like savings account. And then eventually we were sitting on that amount of cash so that if we didn't have money for payroll, we had that account. And I took that strategy from Profit First, this idea of having separate bank accounts where you would stash your money effectively. Same concept as Dave Ramsey with envelopes that he did on the personal side. And then I did all that with my own personal finances as well. And it changed the game for me, Ryan. My credit score went through the roof. I had more money in my pocket. I had more money in the bank account. And while I might be rich compared to some people, I don't think I am. But I used to ask myself this question all the time. Is it a financially responsible thing to do? That's the question I would ask. So at the end of the day, my lesson for small business owners or my tip would be to reserve small percentages every week that they possibly can. I don't care what the percentage is, but something can get into that savings account to build up for a rainy day. Because when the pandemic hit, if you're in a business where you didn't thrive in the pandemic, maybe this type of an account could have helped you. What say you? What do you do for cash flow?
Well, one of the things that when I took over Minute Women, we were doing was we were sending bills out on a monthly basis and getting checks back at the the client's convenience, and that was just too stressful for me. I've had accounts receivable reports that are in the six figures, and that is not something that helps me sleep at night because I do my best to be kind of the stoic and live in the moment. But when you have that kind of money that's waiting to be paid, the longer it takes is the less chance it's going to get paid. And so I made the decision relatively early on in my business career that I was going to be a week to week company, that I took a security deposit up front. I took your credit card information or your ACH information and we ran your credit card when our it was more on our terms than it was on somebody else's terms, and people like that. People want it on a credit card because one, they get the points for it, and two, it's just out of sight, out of mind. It's one less thing that they have to worry about, and everything for the most part is on credit cards or bill pay or automatic billing nowadays. But when we get back to cash flow, I really like that because it allowed me to sleep at night knowing that our accounts receivable wasn't just this monumental amount of money. And then, if a credit card, oftentimes, somebody has a credit card that they usually spend maybe $500 or $1,000 a month on, and all of a sudden that gets used for home care and $4,000 a week is being put on it or whatever it might be, they can max it out rather quickly. And so if that happens, we just reach out to them and talk to them and figure out the problem and things like that. But my tip would be to make sure that you are getting paid on your terms, not the other way around. Getting a deposit up front makes life a lot easier as well because then you don't need to get a loan to pay the caregivers. They're giving you that loan up front, and then at the end of things, you need to make sure that that you deduct whatever's owed from that security deposit and you return that security deposit back in a very timely manner. That only just makes your credibility go up in the word of mouth and referrals. But that's what made my life a lot more saner. If more sane, I guess is the right terminology. Because I in those first few years, when you'd have a bad month or you'd have a bad couple months or you'd have that swing down and home care is extraordinarily peak and valley. You can be up at night wondering, well, what if the what ifs of it, what if this continues? And then I have to, and knowing that you had that week to week cash flow was a big deal to me.
You bring up a good point, and I wrote about it in my newest book, The High Five Effect, that small business owners don't make great decisions always, generally speaking, based on cash flow reasons because they need and want the money and they need and want the clients and the customers. And so one of the ways to get out of that is to get to a predictable amount of recurring revenue every month. When I had the web design company in 2010, we had just come out of that economic downturn, and we decided we got tired of chasing the $10,000 websites, the big sale and then the drop, and the big sale and then the drop, and it was brutal. And so we sort of re-engineered and retooled the company changed the name and the brand and everything, repositioned ourselves, became a WordPress shop who then focused on the recurring billing model. And one thing we actually did to improve cash flow, we took the initial upfront payment of a website and divided it by six equal installments. And then we didn't charge the customer interest or anything like that. But I always told the customer, look, this helps you from a cash flow perspective. And to be perfectly honest, it helps us. So we're just going to charge your card every 6 months. If it was a $6,000 website, it was $1,000 a month for 6 payments. And we would just set it up in QuickBooks and have it billed that way. And we never got stiffed, ever. We never got stiffed on a payment. And so I've heard before, when I tell the story, people are like, well, didn't you ever get, stiffed on a payment? Did somebody ever not pay? Never. Not on the website, nothing like that. And then we had the credit card billing details for the ongoing maintenance and services that we provided afterwards. So it became, when I sold the agency in 2018, 70% of the billing was recurring every month. I mean, that's a powerful way to run a business. And granted, if you're watching this, you may not have the same business model, but you can look and find ways. I mean, Ryan isn't in a recurring billing plan program. I mean, the hours change every month depending on the customer, and there's nothing that's one size fits all in your business. So you manage to make it work. I mean, what are you doing? Are you making sure you bill every Friday or something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, usually we do payroll on Wednesdays and we do billing on Fridays, and then we're always billing 1 week behind because we can't bill for the current week because it hasn't ended. So we let customers know that, like, if you end services, it's going to take a week and a half more than likely to end things. The other, not that it's a tip, it really isn't. This is business 101, but it's not necessarily 101 because you get so busy working in the business, the whole working on the business doesn't happen. But you need to know what your break even is. You need to know how much overhead you have. And for home care, it's hours. We live by hours. So I know that if I have X amount of hours, whatever the numbers, let's say for a new company, you just need 100 hours a week and you're making money because and then as you grow, that's going to be 500 hours a week. Then it's going to be 1,000. So if you're not doing 1,000 hours a week as a moderate sized home care company, that you're probably on the verge of losing money, or if you're not already losing money. And the further you are away in the plus category, away from that 1,000 hours, that's even more money that's coming in revenue. And so that's an easy way to realize if you're in the red or the black, baby. What is that one KPI that says, if I don't have this amount of reoccurring revenue or this amount of clients or this many hours, then I know that I'm going to have a rough week or a rough month. And then you can adjust accordingly, whether that's your salary, whether that's stepping back on SEO services like pay-per-click or whatever it is, to try to offset some of that, so you're at least breaking even, if not making a little bit of money that month.
So what are the things that people need to think about when it comes to cash flow? Like, I mean, it can be a daunting thing to think about, right? I mean, because for me, it took so many years to actually figure out that process. I would say this: probably my biggest tip for getting started is to start small with one small thing. I think the payroll piece of it is a great way for reserving cash. Like, so we need to sit on piles of cash, and I never really knew that until it was too late. Like, by that 2008 was already crashing. And the sad case is, and I've said this publicly, I had to make some very difficult decisions in my design business at that time, and it was a choice between laying off or cutting pay, and I had to cut pay. It was a tragic situation. But in order to keep people employed and to keep the company moving forward, I had to do it. And it was tough. And if I had enough cash, I wouldn't have had to do it. But I didn't. And I wish I had.
Yeah, certainly your first, it's you need to continue to, it's called the lifestyle creep, right? You need to continue to live the same lifestyle you have when you weren't making money as you were making money, for at least 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever that is, until there's a reserve that you can sleep at night knowing that if things were to go to poorly and you were going to have a rough 6 months or a rough year or whatever that comfort, everybody's different, right? Everybody's emergency fund with Dave Ramsey is going to be fluctuating based off of your risk factor and your tolerance to risk. So whatever it is for you, you need to still, Dave Ramsey, live on rice and beans
Rice
until
and
you
beans and beans and rice.
until you have the money in a emergency fund that you know that you have 3 months, 6 months, a year of something stocked away so that you're going to be able to make it through. And of course, you also have to remember, and this is a good thing, is your salary can be reduced as well. Like usually as a CEO or if you're a higher level person, your salary can be reduced, and hopefully your lifestyle isn't such with the creep that you can take that hit. It might not be fun. Again, you might be buying chuck steak instead of ribeye, but you're going to be able to make it through for a few months or a few weeks to get by. There's always places to do that, and there's always fat to cut somewhere before you have to do layoffs or if you have to reduce other people's payroll.
Let's talk about that. Some great strategies inside the book by Mike Michalowicz, Profit First. I'm a big fan of his, but I'm a big fan of his process. And I will say this, let me just put the caveat out there. I don't do Profit First exactly as he designed it. I think, and I believe, just like I didn't do Dave Ramsey's stuff exactly as he designed it. One thing I did do was I molded them together and did them my way, the way that I would keep doing them. And I think that's the biggest thing. You and I have talked about habits and time management, and we'll talk about many of that stuff on future episodes of Riffin with Ryan and Matt. But on podcasts, on the Mass Business Podcast, we talked about time management and strategies and tactics. You have to do what's going to work for you. So don't necessarily assume that the way a book or a strategy or a plan or a program is written is the way that you have to implement it. So, what I've done is, I modified it, but keeping things into different buckets was important for me. That's in my head what worked for me, and I just started with really, really small amounts. So when it came to Profit First, I created a Profit First account, and then I would swipe just 1%. 1%. Now, the way if folks, if you don't know what Profit First is all about, it's this concept where you take profit out of the business before you pay anything else or anyone else, and you swipe a certain percentage to an account. And then after the quarter's over, you get to distribute half of that money back to yourself, and you cannot invest it back in the business. The other half of the profit stays in that account and continues to grow until the next quarter. And it works really, really well if you can get it to work. So I just did 1% so that it wouldn't hurt, and then I would slowly increase it. Going back years ago, I created an IRA for retirement, and I would put $50 a month in it. And after I was done with a year, I called my financial advisor. I said, raise it to 100. And then the next year, I called back and said, raise it to 150. And so what you're talking about is this idea that we stretch ourselves. And Mike talks about it. There's I think it's Pareto's law or something, that you will always consume the amount of time that you leave to get something done. So you fill that void. And so you're feeling we're living at or above our means all the time. And so his concept is smaller plates, just like dieting or losing weight. This concept of smaller plates helps people lose weight. When it came to Dave Ramsey, and I actually started doing envelopes, I would do like a vet envelope for the dog. Like, because what creeps up on you when you least expect it? That's how I used to always think. What are the things that I don't traditionally buy every week or every month that then all of a sudden the bill has to come due? So something like eyeglasses, for example, $500 or whatever, right? $600. I don't have $600 just laying around. So I would reserve that in an envelope. The vet bill. If you take your dog or cat or animal your pet to the vet, it could be $1,000. And so how are you prepared for that so that you don't have to put it on a credit card? And so I would just put $20 in an envelope. And then once I was that comfortable with that, then I would move it up to 30 or 40 or 50, whatever it was. I do the same thing for vacation. I'm a big avid ATVer. I have multiple ATVs and side by sides. I actually have an ATV account where I swipe money for that. Um, I swipe money for my car. And I'll tell you what, Ryan, there's a guy who I rode ATVs with, and this is what changed the game for me. So we're sitting at breakfast one day, and this guy Brian, we get talking about cars, and he says, "I have never had a car payment in my life." And I'm like, "How have you never had a car payment?" It just dumbfounded me because I didn't grow up that way. He's like, "I don't know, I just never did." Like, how do you buy a car? He's like, "With cash." How do you have cash? He goes, "Well, I pay the car payment to myself every month until I have the cash, and then I don't have to pay the interest." And I'm like, duh. And I just never saw it from that perspective. And so now I work to do that every day, and that concept. Mike Michalowicz talks about this idea that he buy an item, he wants an item on Amazon, he puts it in his cart, and he leaves it there until tomorrow. And then tomorrow he asks himself, do I need that today? And if the answer is no, I leave it there. If the answer is yes, I buy it. But if the answer is no, I leave it there one more day. If that thing stays in the cart 2 weeks, you don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never did any of that, to be quite frank with you. When I bought Minute Women, it was a profitable company already. It was not doing well, but it was still turning a profit, and it needed a very uh, strong, and it needed an injection, an infusion of somebody going out there and marketing and advocating for this company, because we were not doing any marketing of any kind, and attrition was just naturally occurring because other companies were marketing, and they were just taking our share of the pie slowly but surely. So I say that within a year, if I had not joined Minute Women, it probably would have folded within 12 months if I had not joined. So
Mm.
with that being said, while I give myself credit for bringing it back to where it was, I cannot give myself the credit of having the benefit of a already functioning foundation with one full-time employee there that could work, and being able to already be at basically close to break even, a little bit above break even, to then my efforts would show immediate monetary success. So with that being said, the way that I always looked at it was keeping my overhead as low as possible. And if I did anything, and this is through trial and error, not from reading it in a book, that it's always on a month-to-month situation or a quarter-to-quarter situation. I made the mistake of signing contracts with people that guaranteed a year's worth of services or 8 months worth of marketing or whatever it is. And I quickly realized through trial and error that my industry, and most people's industries, do not benefit from an overwhelming amount of traditional marketing. Newspapers and radio ads and billboards and all those types of things just do not work for small businesses unless you're willing to put a tremendous amount of money into it over a long period of time, because it is about brand awareness, not quick sales. So the reason I bring that up is every contract for the last 7 years, maybe now, that I've signed is always on a month-to-month basis, at most on a quarter-to-quarter basis. That way, if I'm not happy, if I don't like it, if things are going poorly, if the recession hits and I've got to press the brakes quickly, I've got the ability to take back $2, $3, $4,000 a month in whatever spending I'm
And
doing.
I think that's
To
an important part, is that you need to pay attention to your monthly charges, because sometimes we forget what's being charged on our business owner's card every month. And that's real money. Are we using the services? If we haven't used a service in 90 days, why are we paying for it? Either start
Yeah.
using the service or stop the charging.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not, I mean, I know this is a very contentious subject with Trump, but one thing I remember reading, I'm sure when Trump was in office, because everybody was trying to learn about this guy, was I actually watched a video where Ivanka was running one of the casinos, and she said, and apparently Ivanka was a very savvy businesswoman in and of herself, apparently, and she said, a penny does not leave, no check leaves this casino to a payroll or to a vendor unless I have approved it and I have signed that check. Like it all goes through my desk. And that's how I feel about it as well. Now, do I sign every single check at this point in time? No, I have somebody that does that. But I get an email on a weekly basis of approvals that I need to give about checks that are coming in here. I look at every single charge, I look at every single payroll, and I have caught things, and I've caught things for the better and for the detriment of men and women where we need to pay somebody more because we're not being fair or somebody made a mistake and we need to correct it. Often that is minimum wage goes up, and at the beginning of the year somebody doesn't get the automatic bump or something like that, and we miss a couple weeks, and then we have to back pay them and obviously follow the laws. But you have to, if you are not checking your, I guess my diatribe and my apologies, if you are not checking your credit card statement and your bills on a monthly basis, you are not doing the right things as a CEO.
And that produces cash flow.
It's as simple as that. You have to know what is coming in and you have to know what is going out, because I did a number of credit cards because we have a couple different credit cards that we use for the points, and I write what it's for. This is marketing. This is okay. This is not okay. Here, what's this red thing? Here's a red mark because I got to go back and check that and see what that is. And so the only charges that I have that are an annual charge are association charges to the Geriatric Care Managers Society or Home Care Association of America or Massachusetts Home Care Association. Those are yearly. They're annual. You can't break them into a monthly payment for the most part. But when it comes to 1099s or SEO people or web designers or whatever it is, it's a monthly basis, because I've gotten too many calls from people that say, well, I want a guarantee on this because we're going to do this great marketing for you. And it's like, well, if you're doing a great job for me, why would I want to get rid of you? Like the idea is, why do I have to guarantee you money when you haven't guaranteed me a thing? So I've always looked at it as it's a month-to-month charge. That way you can always jump out of the plane and rip the parachute if need be.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and here's the interesting factor that comes into all of this. Cash flow, what's the connection like to referrals? What's the connection to small business? We know that small businesses are more sustainable with proper cash flow management solutions, whether it's signing checks, paying attention to credit cards, stopping your auto charges, reserving funds in a cash environment, whatever it is. I think that the connection to the referrals, at least from my perspective, is you are a more profitable, more sustainable business, and as such, more referable. And that's an important factor, because if you have all these things together, you become a company that has it together, and that means you're referable. If you don't have it together, you start to lay off people, your staff becomes discontent, there's gaps in the systems and the process, you have charges that are not going through because you did them wrong or whatever. Customers are going to be unhappy, you're not going to over deliver, and as a result, you're not going to get more referrals in the future. And so I think that's an important factor to think about, at least, in my past experience having done this, and I come from it from cash flow with employees and also cash flow with no employees. So I can see both sides of the fence there. And when you're in a business like you're in, Ryan, where staffing is what it is, there's a lot of money moving around, and you have to pay a lot of attention to it.
And I was also lucky because I had two sets of aunts and uncles that were entrepreneurs. One aunt that I bought the company from, and another aunt and uncle that ran a staffing agency in Lexington, Mass, that did Medicaid pediatrics. So it wasn't a competitor, but it basically did a very similar service. And that set of family members had told me that every 5 years or so, a agency crops up out of nowhere. They say that they're going to be the best Medicaid pediatric company in the region. They overpay their nurses. They undercharge the clients, or they overpay the nurses so much that there's really no meat left on the bone once Medicaid reimburses them, and then they miss that one payroll. And then the house of cards crashes down after the second week. They missed the first one, and everybody's promised that we'll make it up on the second week. Don't worry about it. And then the second week comes and it doesn't get corrected, and then the whole thing falls apart. So my point with the cash flow is not just about always the marketing, it's about the recruitment and the retention of your employees. Because in my world, which anybody that's connected with me on LinkedIn is likely in the healthcare sphere, if you miss a payroll or two, that's instantaneous game over in our world, because you are going to lose out. And I will tell you that if we make a mistake on payroll, I usually treat that as almost a service failure in terms of instead of a client on a caregiver. If we make a mistake, we need to fix the problem immediately. We need to write a manual check, and we need to get it out to that caregiver as soon as possible to rectify the situation, so that they are not letting their other caregivers know that we don't pay on time. Because I guarantee you they're freaking out. I guarantee you they're screaming up a storm to anybody that will listen. But then 5 minutes later, when we pay them correctly, or we explain to them that we did always pay them correctly, they were just reading their check wrong, or whatever the issue is gets resolved, they're not going back to those same people and telling them how great we are and things like that. So it's not only a matter of on the side of your clients and your vendors, but it's also on the side of the retention of your employees, especially if you are a heavy staffing company like I am, where your business is employees and staffing.
Yeah. I It's sustainability of a business. Bottom line. I mean, you're going to stay around longer if you're more stable and have the cash flow, you know.
So, and with that being said, and I know we need to wrap up, to put a bow on it, at least for my little diatribe here, is that if you really believe in your business and you really believe that it is going to be successful, taking a loan on anything that you can get, whether it's your mortgage, whether it's an unsecured loan, whatever it might be, other than I would say maybe cash back, cash out on your credit cards, is likely going to be less of a loan that you probably can make out in your business, right? So if you take a HELOC mortgage out on your house and it's at 5% or 6%, well, I would hope that you would be able to make that 10% or 12% to then not only pay the HELOC back, but then to make your profits as well, so that you will never need the HELOC again, and it will be there for a rainy day if you need it. And if you are not confident that your business can provide that type of profitability, then you don't have a business, my friend, and your cash flow is going to be extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah. You know, I was always somebody that paid attention to loans. We had loans at the agency. Um, Cash flow is king, and having cash at your beck and call just in case something happens. Even in the real estate business that I have, I think it's important that you have access to capital when you need it. You know, if an AC goes down, I have to replace those functioning things. If a heater goes down, I have to replace that, like a boiler or something. And those are not things that I am anticipating, but I have to have access to capital to solve that problem. And the same goes in a business of any kind with employees as well. So pay attention to your bottom line, pay attention to your cash flow, look for strategies. Maybe some of these will work. Make sure you comment on a regular basis to let us know what's working for you. If you want to share it publicly, that's awesome. We'd love to have you guys comment. Don't forget to like this post on social media, and we definitely want you to share this video. We appreciate you. We're trying to bring you some valuable content. Don't also forget to let us know what topics you want us to talk about. I mean, we got a plethora of experience in business for me for about 24 years, Ryan for about 45 or 50 years. I think he's close to 65 in retirement now. At least he looks that way. And so we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna do a little bit more cutting up on each other down the road. That's what we like to do, and hopefully you can be a good, have a good time and be a part of that with us and share that experience with us as we move forward. Uh, this has been Riffin with Ryan and Matt. Don't forget to live happy, smile a lot, and high five everyone around you. Thumbs up. What the hell is that?
I'm doing
What the
my
hell is
thumbs
that?
up.